Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Nunas Nunchi podcast. I am so excited to have Dr. Chi for short. I'm going to say her name because I want you to know her name, Dr. Chinyere Osuji. She is a professor of sociology at Rutgers University, Camden, and we met on Clubhouse. Where else? I feel like we all meet on Clubhouse. But what I loved about her that caught my ears was when she just had some, first of all, you were hilarious. And she said something really funny. And I was like, who's this? First of all, and then when your profile said doctor and only doctor. So we're like, doctor, welcome to our Clubhouse room. So that's why we're like, who's the doctor? And then you just had some great insight. And that's why, and you're one of the staples in our rooms now. So this is the room that we host with Bina Hart, Sumbi, but also the other rooms, right? There's all the other K-drama rooms there. So super excited to have you, Dr. Chi. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Like, for some reason on Clubhouse, it's written as Dr. Chi, but the Chi always gets cut off. So people are like, doctor. I'm like, I don't want you to don't ask me for medical advice, you know?
Yeah, we're like, welcome, doctor. And then I go to your profile and then I'm like, oh, okay, Dr. Chi. And then we now know. So now we know you, so it's all good. But no, your name sometimes does come up and sometimes it doesn't. So it's really weird. It's like a Clubhouse thing. But I am so excited to have you. So let's talk about, how did K-dramas help you in the midst of the pandemic?
Wow, great question. So I have multiple sclerosis, and that means that I use a cane. I have trouble with mobility. I use a cane to walk, and I sometimes use a walker. And I'm on immunosuppressants. So with the COVID pandemic, like rearing its ugly head, there's so many questions about how the drugs that I'm on would affect me if I got COVID. And so I was on lockdown, like literally, I didn't see my friends, didn't see my family. And I'm a single woman. I have a studio apartment in New Jersey. And so I didn't interact with my friends or family for a long time. My family lives in Chicago, and like most of my family, my mother's a nurse. A lot of them are, essential workers. So I couldn't go home to Chicago and feel safe that I wouldn't catch COVID. And so I ended up watching a lot of K-dramas, and K-dramas really helped me get through the whole thing. Like it was like a little beacon of light, like, oh, I'm all by myself, but Park Seo Joon is so hot, so let's go.
That's true. And that is why I do what I do. K-dramas and mental health. Thanks for sharing that. So yes, Park Seo Joon was the beacon of light, but you said the first one that you saw was Chocolate.
Yeah.
That's about healing and trauma. Yeah. So yeah, did that help? Did that kind of uplift you, even though a lot of people chose not to watch that one, just so you know?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I knew nothing about K-dramas. Like Netflix kept saying, recommend, chocolate. I'm like, who is chocolate? Who are these people? What language is that? Are they in Asia? I don't know. And then finally I was like, okay, you keep recommending this show called Chocolate. I do like chocolate, so it's play, right?
Yeah.
And I watched it, and it was very, like, a lot of crying, a lot of almost every episode is like, oh my God. And it was very cathartic for me, like, given all the loss that I was experiencing, like not spending time with my family, not spending time with my friends, and like, yeah, and the whole humanity of the drama, and just really touching, oh my gosh, into that cheesy thing called the human spirit. Like, even if you're not, Korean or, anything about Korea, like just being able to see humanity and dealing with in difficult situations and overcoming them, because like part of the show takes place in a hospice,
Yeah.
So
no, it's a lot about healing that drama. I mean, I'll be honest, I didn't finish it because it's where I was at the time. I was like, oh, but you needed that. And that is why I think K-dramas can be healing. And it was cathartic for you. You use that word, cathartic.
Absolutely. So Netflix knew what I needed.
Thanks for sharing that again, that is why I love K-dramas. The power of K-dramas to help you through. And now you're more mobile in the sense of, I'm assuming you've gone to visit family since you opened up. Yeah. That's good until we're on lockdown again. No, I'm just kidding. Knock on wood.
I mean, come on. The Delta variant is nothing to play with. I think it's right around the corner. I'm like, okay, is it going to be a lockdown tomorrow?
I know. So it's something to think about. We hope not, because we're vaccinated and we know more. Professor of sociology, Rutgers University, Camden. Let's talk about that. I mean, because obviously you and I probably look at perspective to our jobs, but not really. But I want to know, as a sociologist and K-dramas, What's your takeaway? And that's a long question, I'm sure, but I know, right? But that's what this is all about. It's about you. Yeah. So tell me, as a sociologist, your perspective on K-dramas.
Well, let me tell you, Jeannie, I was just reading this text on Black Marxism, planting racial capitalism in its origins in feudal Europe. And so as I'm thinking about, like, I'm always thinking about structure, right? I'm not just thinking about individuals and pajamas. Like, I think about, as a sociologist, we're trained to think about structures and structures of inequality more than anything. And I'm a race scholar. I study race and ethnicity, and especially relations between people, individuals of different races and ethnicities, and what it means for how it shows us what race means, how we understand it, how people shake things up, and how people reproduce racism and white supremacy. So with that approach, K-dramas are like fascinating to watch, right? Like I fell into them just like because the pandemic, but like one of the things I really appreciate about K-dramas is that they don't pretend that capitalism doesn't exist, right? They don't pretend that money is what helps make the world go round. And that's something that I've really appreciated because I think about it a lot, right? And so from a sociology perspective or a sociological approach, I think a lot about who are the players? How are they thinking about capitalism? Are they contesting the system? Are they trying to navigate, just negotiate, the system? And of course, I'm always thinking, and what does this mean for Black people? Because I'm always for the Blacks, right?
Yeah.
That is my life's work. So I'm like, how does it affect Black people? What are Black people in this? What are they saying about Black people? Well, not what they're saying about Black people, right?
Well, and also, then I would love to hear that. So what do K-dramas do for Black people?
Ooh, that's my question. I should have been, right? So I will speak on a personal level, and then I'll speak on a different level. And because I've not done research on this at all, but I'm fascinated about it, or fascinated with it. And it's something that it's a new project that I'm going to be developing in the near future, I hope, or that's my plan. But for me personally, like, I fell into K-dramas because I was tired of watching stories of Black death on the television and in the newspapers. I was tired of, the next story about a police officer killing somebody, or like, a white person who had like stalked a Black person and decided to shoot them, or, I was just tired of it. And sometimes when I get tired of US racism, I go abroad because I'm like, they have their own issues with racism, but those aren't my issues. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. All racism is my issue, right? But it's like, it's a nice break sometimes just to get away,
Yes.
And I was actually planning on going to Spain last year and going to Nigeria. My parents are from Nigeria. They were born there. I was, of course, I'm Nigerian American.
Yeah.
And so I was planning on going to Nigeria, reconnect with my homeland, being in an all Black society. And all of that was thwarted with COVID-19. So I was like, okay, so I need a break from this country and the ridiculous politics of how they're not taking care of this pandemic. And I was like, what is this show? K-dramas. So K-dramas for me provide a release, and initially, especially, like a way to not have to think about our society's problems and just look at another society and how, what are the problems in Korea? Like, how are people understanding their lives and their worlds, and how are they negotiating that? And then, but then every now and then something pops up where you're like, oh, what did they just say about Africa? Like Descendants of the Sun. People love Descendants of the Sun. But I remember like the first time I was watching it, and there's this comment like, oh yeah, you could go to Africa. They need doctors there, and they said it like there's a horrible way.
I do remember that comment. Yeah.
And like, my cousins are doctors in Africa. And I mean, they seem to have pretty okay middle class. I mean, things are, not perfect, right? But like, I didn't like that. And then there's other colonial militaristic propaganda stuff with Descendants of the Sun that I've never been a fan of.
Yes, I know. We talked about this. We're like, you're not a fan of dots, but then your perspective that you just shared, well, it makes sense. So yeah, I get it.
Yeah. And then like, you've got like these little incidents here and there where someone's like, I'm gonna dress up like a Black person.
Yeah,
Why
I know
would
which one you're
you?
talking about. I
I mean,
know.
there's multiple, Jeannie. Come on, it's
Yes,
not
there
just
are.
one.
You're right. There are multiple. That was the
Yeah.
biggest one just because it was during the timing of what the timing was. But you're right. No, there are multiple. So
I'm
then I
just
was
like,
to ask you this. Sorry to interrupt you, but since we're on the subject, what do you think of Itaewon Class? Did you see Itaewon Class?
oh, I did see it, and that is where I fell in love with Park Seo Joon.
Okay, yes, Park Seo Joon, of course.
He's such a
Really, in
cute.
that one? He looked kind of
I mean,
funny in
so
that one.
like he was not hot in that one, but he was good looking. It was one of those things
Yes,
where
he
like
has a good-looking face, right? But that was your first
yeah,
Park
but you
Seo
can
Joon
no, but the
drama?
thing is like you can tell that he's got like a really nice body underneath those clothes that he was not taking off, which is fine. It's
Right, right. It's you know what it is?
but you
It's
can
just the
see the
bangs, the
muscle.
blunt bangs that went like this. That I was like, we want to see your forehead, but no, I no, he does have a really good looking face. So that was your first exposure to Park Seo Joon?
No.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, like, yeah.
Give me some credit, Jeannie.
Okay, I was about to say,
I'm
Dr.
teasing,
G, come
teasing.
on.
But you asked me about Itaewon Class, right? And so
Sorry.
like there's that black character in
Yes.
Itaewon Class who like it was like, oh, this is like their way of like showing like black people actually exist in the world. And so I appreciated
Korea.
that. It's like there are
Okay.
black people and we interact with them sometimes in Korea and sometimes they're
Yeah.
actually Korean. It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
okay. I
nice.
liked it too, mainly because honestly, and I'm sure he had to practice it, but his Korean was pretty good. And it seemed to, and I guess I was just watching it like, you're right, just like me. I actually related more to Tony, his character, because I am Korean American, but I'm really Americanized. So even if I went to Korea, I'd probably be more like Tony, even though my face is Korean. Does that make sense? So it's
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
like all an identity. You know what was funny? He clearly identified as Korean. He
yeah.
kept saying, what are you talking about? I'm Korean. And I was like, that's when my heart went, you know what? Doesn't matter what you look like. It's the identity that that you really relate to. That's how we related, where I don't generally, I feel like I would stick out like a sore thumb in Korea, even though I'm Korean. Does that make sense? Because
Yeah,
again, it's all cultural, but
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So you did like that. Now going back. So let's take out the sociological. You said something
Sure.
interesting. You
Oh,
said
so
you
that,
turned
that
to,
was my personal take on it, but I guess
yeah.
I kind of mixed the two, right? Like I talked about
Yeah.
sociology.
Well, okay. Well, then real quick on the personal still, you mentioned you turned to it because you were, yes, a lot was going on last year. And then you chose to watch Another Society's Problems.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it seems
Oh,
like
so
you
you
got
asked
hooked.
like, yeah. So you were asking me, so what does K-drama do for Black people?
Yeah.
And I think from a sociological perspective, I'm like, I don't think I have an answer. I'm still figuring that out. But one thing I'm seeing is that it's helping Black people create community around the world. Like I am talking to people who watch K-dramas who live in England, who live in Ghana, who live in the United States, who live in Canada. And every now and again, like a Brazilian, so it's like, wow, like, look at that. Like we're just establishing this whole Africa and African diaspora world,
Yes.
through K-dramas.
And even Nigerians, let's talk about the Nigerian culture. I think I've heard from some of my Nigerian friends saying they really relate to some parts of the Korean culture because of their parenting or the way they grew up. And I'm like, that doesn't surprise me, but yet it still does, because I want to hear more of that. We just kind of we tend to, even though we talk about, can we hear about other people's perspectives? Not every Korean has the same experience. Not every Black has the same experience. I love hearing the fact that Nigerians like, no, I love watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how my parents were. I'm like, I love hearing that. I mean, just because it means we have more in common than we think. Everyone focuses on the differences. Anyways, that's a side note. We could talk about that later, but I love that you share, right? It's so, okay. So that's the personal. Now, professionally speaking, and I know you're still kind of delving into it. What fascinates you? Why are you still studying it? What is it? What's like drawing you in there? You're like, okay, let me figure this out,
Yeah, I think a lot of it is the capitalist element of it, of how people are having these critiques of capitalism and like, okay, well, money works, the world will go around. So our goal is to buy a building in Seoul, even though we're in the midst of massive gentrification, redevelopment, right? And so that is what is going to protect you in this environment. Well, not everybody gets that chance. You see people struggling with rising housing prices or like maintaining their, like keeping their land or what have you. There's different struggles around it that I think are, that I really think are important. And I appreciate that there isn't this idea that if I just work hard, I'll be able to solve it. It's like, No, like let's have this like with Vincenzo, like we're a bunch of tenants and we're gonna band together and fight against these people who are trying to buy our land. And they didn't form a tenant union, no, they became monsters.
That was the, I know, I like that K-drama, but again, different perspectives, but I hear you. It's so interesting how we bring different perspectives when we watch the K-dramas. I'm like, look at that community.
Yeah.
And love.
I love that. I was like, they're working together.
They hated Vincenzo in the beginning. Remember, they were like, who are you?
Yeah.
And then they're there for him, right?
Italian.
Exactly. Yeah. Italian, you're not a Korean. And then I don't know what bonded them together. Maybe what did bond them together?
Him being mafia. They thought it was the coolest thing. Like, oh, you're mafioso. Wow. And him looking down on the guys like Italian food, like, oh, you're spaghetti carbonara.
Right. That was hilarious. I like that show. Yeah. So, and I love the fact that they all, especially after his mom was, sorry, spoiler alert, but something happened to his mom and then they were there for him. I don't know. That's the feel good stuff, but regardless. So yeah, interesting. So you like the fact that Koreans don't hide it or sugarcoat capitalism, making money. So what is your favorite, I don't know, not business story, but showing like that capitalism story, the chebo, the chebo, that word, the chebo.
Yes, I'm familiar with it. Yeah. What's your favorite chebo story?
Right. What's a good chebo story that you really like that, or do you like them? Or maybe you just think it's real. I don't know if you really like them. So I shouldn't assume that you like them.
I mean, I think that it's not that I like them. I feel like when you dive into the K-drama world, there's just so many of those stories. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, you're like, okay, this is an interesting story. Okay, now I want to see other kinds of stories, So for this reason, you brought up Itaewon Class. I really liked the whole vengeance narrative of Itaewon Class, Mm-hmm. And I actually screenshot or did a screen recording of the laughter of the chaebol, the evil chaebol,
the Jenga guy, the older guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
His laugh was so big. He's like,
yeah, haha. And he would just look
like a great laughter
with his eyes squinted.
Yes.
Like,
and I think he was wearing traditional attire too.
Yes, he was. And they aged him. He doesn't look, he's actually not that old.
Yes.
Yeah. You saw Reply 1988.
I have not.
He wasn't okay. Well, he was Dr. Chi. That's my favorite one. No, he was in that, but he's in a lot of ones. He was in Vincenzo.
He's in Vincenzo. Yeah, he was a dad. Yeah.
And he was.
He does not have gray hair.
He's not a jerk.
Itaewon Class.
Yes, Itaewon Class. So you like the vengeance story. So what'd you think of the rich, big conglomerate trying to beat down the small business?
I was like, yes, we see that all the time. I was like, yeah, that happens.
That's
if you
true.
use Facebook, you know what that's like. Right? That is
true.
The world. That is the logic of capitalism, right? Like you have to buy more, you have to take on new markets, and you have to just acquire and grow, and more money. And that's how it was. But Park Seo Joon's character was like, ha ha ha, I will thwart your efforts.
Yeah, I will be one day the one that I take over you. Yeah. And that's why people love it. That's why we kept watching. We're like, please beat the big giant.
Yes.
The big mean giant. Yeah.
Yeah, we love it. And so it's like, he just ends up becoming a chaebol himself, which that's a lot. But at least he's a nice, chaebol, and he's a good-looking chaebol, and he had a heart of gold. He really cared about his worker. That's the thing. It's so funny about Korean dramas because they're like, we don't just want any chaebol. We want a chaebol who cares about their workers as they're exploiting us.
Yeah.
Nice to us.
And most of them are nice. They do try to present. Well, you know how the story is? They're jerks in the beginning, fall in love, and then change.
Yes, she changed. She makes him a better man.
Yeah, I was trying to think of another chaebol that I really like.
I mean, my favorite of all time, my favorite chaebol is the What's Wrong with Secretary Kim. I mean, he is such a good chaebol in that one because he's a jerk.
He is a jerk. He's beyond a jerk, actually. He's kind of, but I almost want to say he's a clueless jerk. Not to give him any credit, but some people don't know they're being a jerk. Yes. That's what I sense from him. There's some people who know they're being a jerk. Mm-hmm. He was just so into himself. I just don't think he was just that clueless. that make sense?
Mm,
Yeah, I was kind of giving
absolutely.
him some sort of like, you're that clueless.
He's a narcissist. He's a clueless narcissist,
Yeah,
right?
and there are some
But that
clueless
aura
narcissists.
scene, I mean, I was hooked. What is that?
Wait, what? When were you hooked?
One of the first episodes where
Oh,
like he's like, "Do you see that?" And
oh
she's like,
yeah,
"What is
the
it?"
aura scene. He's like, look at my, yes,
I love that.
with the
I
floppy
wanted
hair.
that. Like one day I'm gonna walk into my classroom and be like, "You guys see that?" And just go
And you know
and
what? People
catch
might
it.
get that because so many people are watching K dramas. They might
Uh-huh.
be like, that is a Secretary Kim reference.
Yeah, they might.
They might say that. Okay, so cool. So you started watching because of basically something different you wanted to watch. Now, how many of you watched today? I don't think you're counting them, but just tell me ballpark figures since the pandemic.
I can't even tell you. I mean, I've seen dozens.
I feel like you've seen not more than me overall, but more than me in the last year. Because I'm like, huh? Not when we're on Clubhouse, I'm like, no, I didn't see that one. I heard of it.
I
So
haven't seen Reply 1988. So there's like all sorts of classics and great dramas that I know are going to be so good that I have to be ready for it. And
you have to
maybe
be
now is
ready for it. That one is good, but yeah, you're right. You have to. That in it is a culture in itself. It's like a cult classic. So you kind of have to. It's not Love featuring marriage and divorce. We'll talk about
right.
that. It's not nevertheless like instant, like not instant gratification, but what's the word? An instant like, whoa, what it's
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
a
Yeah.
slow build.
It's a slow build, but then yeah, it's very rewarding. So speaking of which, what are you watching now?
So I will say I did watch Reply 97. I
Oh
did see
yeah.
that
Okay,
one.
so that's good. All the replies are pretty good. 88 is
Mhm.
just my favorite.
Oh, it seems like it's a lot of people's favorite. So that's
Yeah,
why I'm like, oh, this is a special treat. I have
I
to
think you'll
save this
like
one
it.
and save it.
I think you'll
Yeah.
like it. Yep. Oh, because I was trying to think from a sociological perspective. Yeah, I think there's a lot to it. You'll see different things, different aspects of the neighborhood living. There's no real trouble per se, but there's still talk a lot about like not classism, but what's the word? Just how people are, even in a neighborhood, the different nuances
Okay.
of money.
A stratification system within the
Yes,
neighborhood,
yeah, exactly. That's it. I was trying to think of the word.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But it's very well done. No, you know what I mean? And they're all friends. So anyway, side note. So anyway, what are you watching now? I kind of know, but I want you to tell the audience.
Sure. So I'm watching Nevertheless, which is giving me trauma. Because I'm just like, this guy's a jerk. So and like she's like, well, so it's a story about a man who is a friend with benefits to a woman, and they're both in art school.
Mhm.
And he's kind of taking advantage of her, or he's like, he is an F boy, is what we should
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
He's one of those guys who like, he likes the butterfly, theme for the people that he dates, but really he's a butterfly who flips around from woman
What's
to
around?
woman.
Right, right.
And like then he encounters this woman that he likes, but he doesn't even realize he likes her because he doesn't understand that whole thing about like wanting to be in a relationship with somebody because he's just so used to like flitting about. It's like, oh, I like you, I want you, it's like,
Yeah.
that's not healthy. And she's like, I'm really drawn to you, but I know what the kind of guy you are, but I really like you, but it's just like
Does
really
she really?
pain.
Okay, so I want to talk about that. You know why I'm not watching. I'll just tell folks. You just said it's giving you trauma. So that's the very reason why I'm not watching. No, I'm not watching because I feel like sometimes I see that play out in real life in my work.
Yeah.
So I just want a little bit of break from that. But I'm curious because I hear about it. But is it really like, does she really like him? Or what is that about? Is it more sexual attraction? Because there is a friends with, you know what I mean? What is it? Like, is it really I like you for who you are? Or is it all sexual attraction?
That is the thing. I feel like watching the first couple episodes, my girlfriend, she's like, what is this I'm feeling? It's not love. What is this? It's like, girlfriend, it's called lust. Take a cold shower. You'll be okay, But she didn't have this understanding that there is this thing called female desire, And so the Black feminist in me is like popping out. And I'm like, yeah, women like sex and want to have sex too. And she doesn't even seem to have like a language or an understanding of that or how to separate that or like disentangle that from like building a relationship with somebody and like having feelings for
Interesting.
somebody, liking a person, not just liking touching them or how they touch you, So
Right.
she's very good at that distinction, and it's
I
kind of
gotcha.
sad.
So, because we talk about this in real life, like women feeling desired. and not being able to separate that it could just be about sex, but then it makes them feel good. So they actually, it's like kind of misinterpret love for sex or sex for love. Does that make sense? And then it gets confusing. So that's why, are you guys seeing this unfold then? And you're just frustrated for her, or like, are you on her side? I'm assuming, because it sounds like it.
But here's the funny thing. Like I haven't had these situations in my life, but a lot of women have. And so I think a lot of the viewers are like, oh, he's an evil man. How can he do this to her? What is wrong with him? That poor girl. And I'm just kind of like, maybe it's also because I'm a little older. I'm like, oh, but I also see her making life decisions, you know?
I think it is
like,
age, because people are like, it reminds me of college. It's bringing back this angst. And I'm like, really? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I guess I would just see it as, so you have some more empathy, sounds like, for both sides, or understanding a little bit. Okay, no,
I have empathy for no one.
Okay.
I'm just like, all of you guys are a hot mess, and you guys need some time apart from each other so that you can figure out what your feelings are. And hopefully you'll be able to, you know, meet somebody who is a good match for you. And that person probably is not. So I feel like with the Park Seo Joon character, he's just an F-boy, and like, he's probably gonna be one for a long time. So she just needs to find somebody else.
So interesting. So what's keeping you watching? Just because it's entertaining?
Yeah, it's so entertaining. And like, so like, I want to know what happens at the end. You know, I'm like, is she gonna make the wrong decision? Is he gonna make a bad decision? Are they gonna end up together? I hope not. So it's almost like watching a car accident slowly unfold, where you can't turn your eyes away.
Yeah.
You see it happen.
Oh, that's a great analogy, right? You're looking at the car accident and you're like, what's happening? I'm holding up traffic. Oh, interesting. That's a good analogy. Like. So I'll let you tell me the end when you watch it, and then I'll decide.
Oh, well, it's based on a webtoon, and people say that in the webtoon, it's not a positive ending, and they say that like it's pretty true to the webtoon, but there's kind of like little, you know, signs here and there that they might not end it like the webtoon. So like he's a little bit more empathetic, and they tell things from his perspective, and I'm just kind of like, I don't care about his perspective. He's trash. But whatever.
Yeah, okay. So that's what you're watching. And then what else are you watching?
What else am I watching? Love Featuring Marriage and Divorce. I'm watching the first season because everybody's like, the second season is amazing. It's so good.
That's what people say. But you know what? I don't know if you heard this, Dr. Cheese. Someone told me, actually 2 or 3 people have told us. I think we were in the same room, or maybe I heard it somewhere else. We don't have to watch season 1 to watch season 2. People are like, you could skip season 1 entirely, which they said was bad, and go to season 2, and they said it's very well written. So I'm considering doing that, because I stopped watching after episode 7 of season 1.
Yeah, I'm on episode 8, and I'm kind of like, okay, this is really, really slow. It's like needlessly slow,
and it's kind of like, and then I just got sick of people, and then I don't know, the deceit, whatever. I was like, turn it off. But I liked some of the women characters. So I did remember going, you know, I do want to see what happens to them. And then the season 2, someone saying, no, it's much better. And it's almost like it was a different writer. So I have to look that up. But I might do that. And I might just start season 2.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you for that.
I think I was someone, Bina or somebody said it. You know what, it was Sophia, she's just skincare, I don't know if you know her. She goes, no, Jeannie, you could just skip season 1. And you know what, I'm good with that, because sometimes I just want to, like, I don't know, the double seasons of these new K-dramas, I don't know about it. I liked when they had an ending.
You know, it benefits everybody except for the viewer. You know, other people get to work more, they get another paycheck, you know. It's great for if you're the director, the writer, the actor.
Look at you, sociological angle. No, I'm kidding. They get a paycheck, Jeannie. They have a,
but for the viewer, it's terrible. You're like, okay, Hospital Playlist only needed 1 season. They artificially ended it early and slowed it down for the second season when things should have picked up. And it's just sad.
Oh, you're not liking second season? Well, I like second.
I'm not liking it. I'm liking it. It's just that, like, a lot of things that happened up till now could have happened in like 1 episode, maybe
You're right.
2.
You're right. They could have ended, actually, like Vincenzo did a 20 episode K-drama for hospital season. I don't know why they did. You're right. I see it. Yeah. So
hey, they're like, hey, here's 20 episodes. They're like, oh my God, I get to work for 20 episodes. Oh my God. And then we were watching it like, okay, this could have been better handled with some better editing, but you know, people got paid.
True. Yeah, look, so you take, it looks, well, okay, so you're talking very pragmatically now. Any K-dramas you watch that you're just like, I don't know, it gripped you. Like, look at me, I'm getting to the mental health angle, folks. Anything that gave you the feels or something like, wow, like,
Oh
do you
my
know
God.
what I mean? Emotions and
Oh, you know, Something in the Rain is like one of my favorite K-dramas of all time.
I didn't know it was one of the favorites.
Love that K-drama. I was like, Jung so adorable.
Well,
I mean, it's
yes, he's
he's a
adorable.
good boy. But also it's like my first Nuna romance, you know?
Oh,
And
okay.
as a woman who's like, you know, in the midlife era of her life, I guess.
Here, me too.
Okay, and it's just like, okay, I'm not a young thing who's gonna like make dumb mistakes. You know, if I make mistakes, it can have like lasting consequences at this point. And so like but also being open to love, right? And
Right.
just seeing how she's like open to love but is uncomfortable with the package it appears in was like really touching and interesting. I also appreciated the whole family dynamics of like, because like of course like in Nigerian families and in Korean families, like your parents matter a lot. You have to have a lot of respect for your elders. You can't just do things willy-nilly. I'm just dating this guy. Who is he? Where is he from? Do we know him? You know,
What does he do?
what does he do for a living? Is he a doctor, lawyer, engineer? No, I'm just kidding.
I know. Oh, exactly. Well, hey, yeah, kind of. Right.
And so like, watching that unfold in that show is really fascinating, and seeing things like people kneeling and bowing. I'm like, oh, Yorubas do that. My people don't really bow, but I'm like, oh yeah, the Yorubas do that. And like just seeing like how the mom was just very class conscious, but she felt bad about being class conscious, and she tried to couch her distaste, spoiler alert, distaste for the relationship and
for the relationship. Yeah. But she
Yeah.
says some things though. What do you think of that? Some of the dramatic scenes between her and our lovely Chung Hae-in and then Sonia Jin, I forget their character's name, but all of that, the culmination of when she finds out, and she says some, I mean, people, what did you think of that scene of what she said to him, especially? Like, you know, because remember he was like a childhood friend or childhood family friend. And
She'd
then
known him since they were children.
exactly. But she said,
like,
I think some cold things.
she was horrible. I mean, so first of all, a lot of people don't like Something in the Rain because of the mother. They're like, she was horrible, she was terrible. And they prefer One Spring Night because it has a lot of the same actors, including
it does have a lot of the same themes and not as dramatic. But no, I love Something in the Rain too, though. But that one scene, I wouldn't say I hated the mom. I kind of felt like it's realistic.
Yeah.
Maybe not as mean,
are
I don't
very
know.
like,
yeah.
And I mean, I felt like she was just extremely classist and mean.
Yeah.
And she was using her daughter as a tool for upward mobility and to show like, look, I'm a successful mother because I have this daughter who has married well. And it was clear that she didn't really care about her daughter's feelings throughout the show, right? She didn't really care about her daughter's emotions, her well-being. What she cared about was her daughter getting married to a wealthy person, and making her look good so that she can go to the wedding dressed in her cute outfit and like, you know, take all the cards, or like, you know, that's what she was interested in. And she was using her daughter to accomplish that. So, I mean, and the relationship between the mother and the father I thought was hilarious, particularly the whole light switch thing, like how she wielded so much like power that it was like, she wouldn't even let something as small go as like, who turns off the light before we go to bed, you know?
Yeah.
And he was always like,
so you watching it, why is it your favorite though? What was the part that you really related to, or what was so relatable about it that made it your favorite? Because that's a pretty strong statement to say it's your favorite.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorites. I have two favorites. One of the things I really like about it is how it deals with sexual harassment and the workplace. Like, I really appreciated that it took this woman's workplace seriously. Like, I think a lot of times when I watch television, and granted, this was a time when I was like transitioning into K-drama watching, a lot of times we see people at work, they're like not even working, you know? They're like just talking to their coworkers, right? But we see her like working and like negotiating the relationships with her coworkers, particularly her male coworkers, and seeing how these women are trying to strategize around avoiding sexual harassment was fascinating. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't know that things like touching somebody is like more taboo in Korea than it is in the US. So when I was watching it, I was like, okay, like he's touching her inappropriately given he's a coworker. But then I watched it a second time after watching more dramas and knowing a little bit more about Korean society. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe he snapped her bra.
Yeah, because they don't even hug, like male and female coworkers in the US, we hug. Well, we're much more affectionate. Ooh, not in Korea, right?
Oh, and I'm going to karaoke and like just like getting too touchy. I was just like, oh, the second time I watched it, I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. No, I like that. No. So what is most relatable about Something in the Rain, though, that is one of your favorites?
So the thing that's so relatable about it is the female friendship. Like we rarely ever see women like have friends that they just do goofy stuff with.
Yeah.
And like I really loved how in the show, like the best friend, Jung Hae-in's older sister, was like her BFF. And them just like getting together and just singing their favorite songs and like getting down when nobody's looking, you know, it was so adorable and so relatable, you know, like we've all had, I think, friends like that where we're just like, we're so comfortable with them. They're almost like sisters to us, where like you can have those kinds of conversations or just like do goofy things. And so like the whole like going to each other's houses and just like drinking their beer and like being at home in her friend's house. I mean, I like that. And I appreciated like just seeing female, like women who are friends. Yeah. And also seeing women who are not friends, but like who are like, hey, I like this guy, then you like him too. But like,
right.
Yeah, I that's real too.
That's a good point. Real you don't see in a lot of K-dramas. Well, you're seeing it more, but it's not as common to see women, like the women friendship. You see romances.
Right.
Goblin, but you know, but you're right. That is kind of nice to see. So, okay. So that was relatable. Cool. What's your other favorite one? Because you said it's one of your favorites.
Oh, so another thing I loved about was the cinematography.
Cinematography.
Yes, it was beautiful. Like the scene where like they see like under the table, like they hold hands.
Yes, like, I love that one when they went to the bar. Yeah. That was nice. She was the one that initiated too, I think, to comfort him or something.
Oh, because she wanted to like let him know that, oh, you're mine, and this other girl is going to take you from him, but like, no, you can't do that.
Oh, that's right, that's right. And she did it because, and that was her first display of affection, I feel like, because he was always more showy.
Yeah, and like just in general, it felt very lifelike the way that they filmed the show. So it didn't feel like, okay, you're on a set. You could tell that the director had like told them like, okay, just grab a drink whenever you feel like it. Or, you know, it was like a lot like less hands-on, which I think made it feel more natural, which I appreciate.
Cool.
And so my other favorite is that show Miss Aang.
Oh,
about the workplace, like stick it out.
Oh, Miss Sang. Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Say it right.
Like, huh? What?
Yeah, me Sang. Sorry, me.
Oh, so you like the workplace dramas?
Apparently, I didn't know that.
No, but that's like a cult classic too.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating, again, thinking about the classism and seeing like, okay, I deserve this job because I went to the right school. I went to Seoul University. I like took this exam, what have you. And he's like, I just play this game really well. And I was able to get this.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, would you relate that to the US? I went to this school and I have this degree and that's why I deserve this.
Yeah, absolutely. And so as somebody who attended Harvard University only to be kicked out and forced to get a master's degree, thank you, Harvard, I am very much familiar with being around people who are like, I'm upper class and this is where I belong, or like, I'm upper class. And you're just like, oh, that's not my background.
Wait, why were you kicked? I'm still on you got kicked out and told to get a master's degree.
I love telling people that story. So like I had my undergrad from University of Illinois, and I was going to study sociology, and I went to Harvard to get a PhD in sociology. Yeah. And things went weird. Like there were weird rules that they changed my first year. It was just like a hot mess, and I was miserable there because it's a very like competitive university, but more than anything is just like being surrounded by not just like middle class people, but like the global wealthy elite. Yeah, like that's very jarring when you're like a girl from Chicago, you know.
I see. So you felt like that. Well, maybe classism or something. Okay.
Yeah. It was like a lot of things, institutional
Yeah.
racism and like everything.
I was about to say.
But yeah, but I've definitely been in environments where people are like, you know, like I should be here because I'm lying. I don't think I've been in environments like that. That's a lie. That's a lie, Jeannie. I haven't been, maybe I'm the one who's doing it. I went to Harvard University, and so, you know, I should be paid more than everybody. I'm just
No,
kidding.
this is the first time I've heard it, and I don't think it defines you. But I think that's interesting. They really, they didn't kick you out. They kicked you out of the PhD program, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was very traumatizing. It's one of the most traumatizing things that ever happened.
But what was the reason?
Well, the reason was I didn't pass my exams.
Okay.
But there were weird politics around it. Like people who thought they were going to work with me, I was like, I'm not going to work with you because you're racist. Or like them changing the rules when you enter the game kind of thing. Like, oh, this is the way the generals have been for years. But now we're going to do the exams this other way. And it's like, The only two people who like weren't able to pass were, of course, women of color, including a woman from China. So it was just like, this is not a good look, but fine, let them keep it. I didn't need it. I went to UCLA, had a wonderful time, had changed my research agenda from like Black immigrants to studying like race in Brazil. And so you can see one of my paintings, that painting over there is actually from Salvador, the Bahia.
Yeah.
I study racial inequality in Brazil, and I ended up like, working, doing my PhD, but 3 miles from the beach, and living a California life for 6 years. So it was definitely.
And UCLA is nice. So there you go. You're a UCLA. Okay, so very interesting. I know it's not about that story, but that sounds traumatizing.
It was very traumatizing, but thankfully I moved back to Chicago to be with my people, to heal, with my family. And then I was like, okay, let me give this a shot. And meanwhile, like I was working with undocumented immigrant children in Chicago. So it was a very like worthwhile experience to have. And at the end of the day, like I'm not bitter. I feel like it was all a part of the trajectory that led me to where I am. And it's just like, okay, F you, but I have a nice life now. So
no, I'm glad. I mean, and you see that even in K-dramas, like, okay, F you, look at what I'm doing now. Look at me and look how accomplished I am. I didn't go to Seoul National University, but I have this. You see that too in this K-dramas, and that's what we all relate to it. Is there, so me saying, what about Misang that drew you to that? Just your story. And you talked about Harvard. So how did you make that connection? I'm bringing this back.
Well, so the lead, Shiwan, he's a guy who doesn't have that background, right? And he is doing his best at this job. And he doesn't know how to do the job and keeps screwing up. And people, his superiors, are like, oh God. And they're looking at this other person who's like doing phenomenally, right? The female, the one female character in the whole show, and I can't remember what her name's.
I'm never good with names. Yeah. But yes, I know who you're talking about.
And she was like super competent, and he developed a friendship with her, right? And it was interesting to see how like she would help him, but people thought that like maybe there was something romantic happening, but there wasn't. But also the men in the workplace were always like putting her down, making it seem like she was worth less because she's a woman in that space, doing things like making her get coffee for them, right? When she's competent, has the same jobs as the rest of them. And just like I think watching those dynamics just really like it touched my heart.
Yeah.
And again, I really
in the workplace now.
Say that again.
You see that in the workplace now in the US. Just saying.
Yeah, you do. It was still jarring for me. And like it was even jarring for a woman to be in an all-male work environment. I was like, wow, there must be so many places like that. Like here.
So. I mean, you hear maybe less though, but when thinking women of color in certain fields, I think we may stand out in certain fields, and then we are alone and could be treated like that, even in 2021, of course. Yeah. So thanks for bringing that up. No, because I know even back then, Misang was, I think, made in it was older. So it's kind of progressive in that sense, showing that and showing, but I think there's a lot of things, similarity in the US. People are like, oh, you get to see Korean office work culture, but I'm like, I didn't see it. That's why we all like that drama, because we can see some related things. Just saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow, cool. Okay, so I don't want to end on that note. I want to end on a fun
Okay.
note. Okay, so that said, with K-dramas, here's your elevator pitch. I'm good putting you on the spot. Someone's like, Dr. Chi, why would I watch a K-drama? I'm not Korean. Why are you watching K-dramas? What is it about it? Why do you keep watching them? This is where I want you to answer that question.
Oh
Someone's
my gosh.
saying,
Wait, what floor
trying
are
to
we
get someone into
doing?
K-dramas, basically.
Okay.
An elevator
Well,
pitch on K-dramas.
Okay, elevator pitch on K-dramas.
Why would I want to watch K-dramas, Dr. Chi? Why do you watch them?
They tell stories that we don't often hear. And no, it's not a good one.
It's cool. I mean,
culture is like enacting a form of soft power around the world. And if you want to know what's hip and cool, you're probably going to want to at least pay attention to what Koreans are doing. And I'm not saying you have to become a K-drama fan or K-pop stan, but maybe watch Goblin and then like at least have that as in your pocket for a little bit of cultural capital. Like, so you be like, oh yes, I saw Goblin, and watch people's reactions.
Oh, I see what you mean, to feel like you have some connection.
Yeah.
I like the cultural capitalism.
Yeah, no, cultural capital.
Sorry.
It's like, those things you do to show that like you're in the know or like you belong or you're hip.
Oh, right. Cultural capital. Like, showing that, you know what you're talking about.
Like say, oh yeah, I watched Goblin. And so for example, and especially since I'm a professor and like I'm much older than my students, right? I'm not even teaching millennials anymore. I'm teaching the zennials. And they're fabulous. I just adore
they are.
them.
The zennials are fabulous. Yeah.
Pretty smart. And I was just teaching my class online because of the pandemic, and my ringer goes off and it's the theme song from Goblin. And immediately a student messages me in the chat, is that Goblin? And I was like,
you actually have the theme song of Goblin on your phone, or you used to? Oh my gosh, you still do?
I still do. I love it. It's a great song.
Well, there's two that I think of. Which one is the one that you have? Because there's.
Shall I say it for you?
Yeah, because I know there's Round and Round. Oh, that one. Okay. That is
that one. That's one of the. It's like the
it's
song.
One of them, and then the other one that I think of is Round and Round. Da-na-na-na.
That's the song. It's the same song. Did you know
you're
that?
Right. You're right. It is. Okay, you were singing after that. Da-na, da-na-na-na-na.
No, at the beginning of the song, then it transitions to the other singer, and then all the like K-drama stans were pissed because I bought the OST and only had that second half of the song, and everybody wanted the first half.
Yeah, the first half is what makes it so cool.
Yeah, and they're like, what happened? I'm only getting this other part, and the people like, sorry, we didn't do that.
So Goblin, maybe we should end on that note, listening to it.
To the song.
Well, here's the thing, because I think music is a big deal in the K-dramas. That's a part of the reason why I also like listening. I love, how you hear the same song to the K-dramas, you're like, that's the OST. It's kind of familiar when you listen to it, and then you play it on your Spotify, and I'm like, oh, Goblin. Oh, what was another famous one? Like Boys Over Flowers. They had the same theme song, right? There's theme songs. Inheritors has a theme song that I distinctly can hear in my ears, like that. And then I'm trying to think other ones, you know what I mean? Like that have those, they bring you back the nostalgia of the K-dramas.
So here's the thing. It does for so many people.
Not for you?
For some reason, not so much for me. Like I've only ever really paid attention to maybe 2 K-drama OSTs. That is the first one that I ever saw, which was Chocolate. And
you saw Chocolate, okay.
It had a couple of songs in English. So I was like, oh, I actually understand what they're saying. I really like this song, right? So I know, actually have a couple of those songs from Chocolate, but a lot of people haven't seen it. And then the Goblin song, because it was so good, The
Goblin soundtrack is one of the best. It is on my Spotify. I have the entire soundtrack. I'm glad you're a Goblin fan too. So on that note, thank you so much, Dr. Chi, for joining us. I loved having you on the Nuna's Country Podcast. I love having you in the Clubhouse rooms. We're going to be talking some more.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me, Jeannie. Like, it's such a pleasure chatting with you. And it's wonderful that, like, I love how you incorporate, therapy and thinking about like health, mental health with K-dramas. So like, keep doing the good work.
You too. And we'll collab someday soon. I believe it though, because there's something to talk about in the university space with K-dramas. All right.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys, for joining us. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us at Nuna's Nunchy. You can listen in on platforms such as Spotify, Pandora, Google, and Apple, but also watch the podcast on our Nuna's Nunchy YouTube channel every Monday, where it launches at 6 p.m. Eastern.